Hello. Hello and welcome. Welcome to part 2 of resume writing. You have already successfully written something. Now we will talk about how everything you do is wrong. Just kidding. Now we'll talk about what you should fix, how you can make your resume better. Make yourself a little bit more likely to get a callback in this difficult economy. Because remember, we are always trying to get a callback, not a job. A resume does not get you a job. An interview gets you a job. A resume gets you a callback. A callback gets you an interview. A resume might get you an interview, actually, on its own merits, too. But at the very least, a resume gets you a callback. And that's what you really want. You want to at least be worthy of being contacted. Let me know if my desktop audio is coming through, by the way. I don't want you guys to hear my Discord notifications popping up every 5 seconds, so let me know if you're getting those. You shouldn't be. I think I've fixed that. Those were coming through in earlier live streams. And also, again, let me know if you have any issues hearing the audio. There's still some flex. I can still crank it up some more on my end if anybody has very weak speakers. It looks like we've got almost everybody in this stream, so I'm going to get started. What is a noise test? Oh gosh, someone said they can hear my heart beating. I stopped it. Could you hear it there for a while? No. Okay, cool. Looks like my Discord is silent. Only I can hear the constant burps. And there are a great deal of burps. Speaking of which, let me remember to turn off Steam preemptively today. You know, if anything, I see less Steam traffic since the pandemic started. It looks like everybody's finally found a real hobby. Ha ha ha. Okay, so on to resume writing. So hopefully all of you are taking this to heart and writing your resumes. Obviously, I will post the assignment to Canvas here as soon as we're done talking. We're going to go through another iteration of writing and peer reviewing resumes. I'm going to let the Canvas gods randomly give you peer reviewers again. I think I figured out the system, so hopefully everybody gets something to review and everybody gets some reviewers. Make sure this time that you turn it in before the due date, because apparently Canvas is not very good at distributing your stuff to peer reviewers after the due date. At that point, you might not get your own. You might not get anyone to review yours. So try to turn it in before the due date so you can get people to review yours. All right, so first thing about resumes, you probably already know this. You know what? Actually, let's back up. Let me go even before the first thing here. The first thing is that if you ask 5 different people how you should write your resume, you'll get 5 different answers. And that goes for whether you went to the Career Center or even if you paid somebody to help you write your resume professionally. Lots of different standards out there. Everybody has their own opinions. All hiring managers have their own preferences. I speak only to what I know from the cultures I'm in. None of this is necessarily ground truth. I mean, it's not necessarily fact. Okay, so if somebody tells you different, maybe they're right. You know, I could be wrong about pretty much anything here. Okay, so just don't take my word as the absolute. It's very possible that I don't have the right answers on this, and it's also very possible that the Career Center doesn't have the right answer, and it's also possible that someone you pay to write your resume professionally doesn't have the right answer. You never know. Everyone's different. All hiring managers are different. But this slide is the same. This I know is true, and that's don't have any typos in your resume. Professionals have standards. Those guys who were really anal about spelling and grammar when they were 8 grew up to become HR workers. Yeah, it's a little bit of a joke, but it's kind of true to an extent. I certainly know some people that fit that bill. And yeah, the people who are obsessed with compliance and rules, those people are the ones that generally end up reading resumes one way or another. and they hate typos. I even hate typos. So, people hate typos in general, especially in such an important document. I mean, you're sending it to the company, you're looking for a job. It's your first foot in the door. If you make a mistake, you seem like a careless fool, and you're probably not going to get hired. Your application's probably going to get trashed. I know it seems petty, but at the same time, you have to understand it's one page, and you made a mistake on it. It just seems idiotic. It just doesn't make you look like a very diligent worker, at the very least. Right? And it also makes it seem like you didn't pass grade school, which isn't great either. I mean, you should be able to write one page without making a mistake, right? One page without making an error. That's not hard. If you can't even do that when you're applying for the job, how are you going to do it when you're in there? How are you going to write a program without errors if you can't write one page without making a typo? So don't make any typos. Double and triple check your grammar and make sure all your format's consistent and everything. Misspacing and that kind of thing is also a typo. All right. Should you lie? Okay. Everybody lies on their resume, right? A lot of people say that, right? You shouldn't lie on your resume. You shouldn't lie by commission. Never lie by commission. A lie of commission is a lie that is something that is strictly untrue. Like, I was once the president of Uganda. Just put that in my work experience. I was not the president of Uganda. I can't put that in my work experience. It's better to have no job than to be blackballed from a bunch of different companies because you lied and have no job, right? Some people get away with lying about something here or there, especially if it's something small. I mean, obviously, you can claim that you won the Best Paper of the Year award when you were a freshman, and it's unlikely anyone will ever check. You might get away with it, but it's not going to help you that much anyway. And, it's much more likely to bite you in the ass than it is to help you, especially when it comes to things that are easily verified, like work experience. Most jobs today will just run your background check and pull your tax info, or at least run a rudimentary background check on you. So all of your employment will come up. You can't fake it. Just don't do it. Don't lie by commission. Don't put down a language you don't know, anything like that. Now, omission. It's kind of necessary to lie by omission due to space limitations. You can't tell the whole story about everything you do at your job. And a lot of people who are generally very honest feel bad about, let's say, omitting something that makes one of your accomplishments seem less important. So you have an accomplishment like led up to 10 people, but let's say you led 10 people for like 5 minutes when the manager stepped out, but the rest of the time you led 8 people. Technically, it's true you led up to 10 people, but you probably could have just said 8. It was equally impressive. There was no point in lying by omission there. But consider that if you say led up to 8 people or led a team of 8 people, you are also lying by omission because this one time you led 10 for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. It's fine, okay? The spirit of what you're saying needs to be true. You obviously don't have to put the totality of the detail into it. You can mention it when the interview comes up. But should you say something like some skill in HTML when you once glanced at the HTML standard for 5 minutes and maybe spent 10 minutes trying to make a web page and gave up? Probably not. Is it true that you have some skill? Not really. You omitted the fact that some is very, very little. But yeah, I don't think you should put that. So when you lie by omission, it can be very dangerous to you if you get called out on it during the interview. If they ask you about your experience and you go, oh, well, I didn't actually have that much. That looks really bad. So make sure that there's a strong kernel of truth in everything that you say, and what you omit is not super relevant to the details. Make sure the spirit of what you say is true. So avoid commission and omission. But there's a third kind of lie, right? What's the third kind of lie? Some people don't even qualify it as a lie. There's commission, omission, and what's number 3? Anybody know? The 3 types of untruths. Commission, omission, and what else in Discord or in YouTube live chat? What is the lie that is culturally acceptable and almost culturally demanded on the resume? Someone said tax fraud. That is not even a lie. Barely a crime, right? I'm kidding. Don't commit tax fraud. What is tax fraud even? There's white lies. Someone said white lies. White lies are still lies of commission, usually. You say something that's untrue. Oh, honey, you look beautiful today. When they actually look like the Kool-Aid man or something, right? That's still commission. It's an untruth. The third kind of lie is exaggeration, hype, bullshit. Right? There's a difference between exaggerating and bullshitting. Bullshitting's not even considered a kind of lie by many. It's considered its own category. And unfortunately, the cultural norm, at least in America, is that your resume is full of exaggeration. And in certain professions, gladly CS tends to avoid this, but in certain professions, your resume is also expected to contain a large amount of bullshit. So an exaggeration is the truth, but hyped up. All right, so, I just played a beat on my desk becomes song composer. Technically true, but very deeply exaggerated. No omission, no commission, but definitely far from the spirit of the truth in that case, right? Now, bullshit is different from an exaggeration. A bullshitter doesn't care what's true. It's only hype. So a statement that's bullshit would be something that's not even verifiable, right? So the truth has to have some level of veracity, and to have veracity, it has to be verifiable. Bullshit isn't even verifiable. I'm the best! I promoted synergy. I'm a champion. I'm the golden god of computer science. I corrected procedural deviations. I established advanced procedures. Whatever, man. Okay. That's the kind of stuff that some professions require you to have on your resume. Whatever is the hype word of the year of that particular time period, you're required to have some of those. You don't need so much of that in computer science, so I would admit the bullshit, but you will definitely need some exaggeration, and certain companies will also require you to have a certain degree of bullshit, or they'll expect you to at least promote it, right? So remember that those two things are expected of you. If you're not generally an exaggerator, you're not generally the kind of person who does this, you think it's dishonest, try to play along, at least for your resume. It'll help you out. So now let's talk format, okay? First, one page, don't do any more, not until way later in your career. You've got to be applying for management roles or senior roles to really even consider going a page, more than a page. Or stuffy academics like me, we usually have another page of our publications or something attached to the resume. We call them CVs, curriculum vitae, instead. Some organizations will call them CVs as well instead of resumes. But until you're way later in your career, so even those of you who have internships or a few jobs and you're starting to fill up that first page of work experience, what you should be doing is getting rid of the least relevant work experience, or getting rid of the descriptions at least, and just leaving the job name. You should not be adding pages as your work experience grows. And what you did more than 5 years out is barely even relevant anymore. So also keep that in mind. It should only be like your recent past 5, maybe 10 years stuff tops, which for all of you obviously doesn't matter, since I don't think anyone here has been working for 10 years. Complex templates are all over the internet, cool, stylized, nicely graphically designed by people who are skilled at that kind of thing. These can be lovely, but do be afraid of these, because resumes are often read by a machine before they go to a human, and those cool, fancy templates are sometimes not well read by machines, and that can get your resume discarded before it sees human eyes, which would be disappointing, right? Just they would never even see your fancy template. Also, a lot of organizations will still convert your resume to plain text. Those templates do it poorly, so they'll just populate some fields, and the people who review the resumes will sort of look at them in the standard look. So there will be like a work area and a skills area or something like that. Those systems are obviously also pretty primitive, and they sometimes fail to read your fancy template. And also keep in mind, some people print out everything and then read it. It's something a lot of older people prefer to do. They won't read the resumes on the screen, they'll print it out, which if they don't have a color printer can come out quite ugly. Another thing to consider is color blindness. which affects about 10% of men, so make sure your resume doesn't look ugly to somebody who has red-green color blindness, because it's quite common, especially in the computer science professions. And the fanciness of the template, so how curvy and wavy and cool it is, also cuts down on the amount of text you can fit. So you might be better served including more information than being overly fancy. There's definitely a trade-off in being too graphically rich. So make it decent looking, but don't go insane with it, and make sure that it's something that can still be parsed as text. A good way to give it a shot is to open up your file as like a PDF. You usually submit your resume as a PDF, so open it up in Foxit or one of the nicer versions of Adobe, and try to use the reader mode, the mode that turns it into text, and see what it looks like. Does it look like garbled junk, or does it seem to come out okay? So if it looks okay there, it probably looks okay to an automated resume reader, because those PDF readers are pretty primitive too. Headers have to be easy to see, because most people will just look at your resume with the intent to find some piece of info, like, oh, I want to see this person's work experience. So they better be able to find the work experience section really fast. The headers have to be easy to see, distinct. You can accomplish that by having white space around them, either before or after. You can have line breaks, so lines across the whole page, or just like halfway across the page, something to break apart the text. Usually you wouldn't do white space and line breaks, you'd do one or the other. The headers should be in a slightly different font than everything else, either a larger font or bold or underlined or some combination of those things. Some people like to make their headers all caps, that's fine too. Just make sure that the reader can instantly focus on your header, or make sure that they instantly are able to see what they need to see. Font. So use a standard serif font, one of the ones that comes with the word editors that you're familiar with. So with Word or LibreOffice or whatever, use Calibri or Times New Roman or Liberation. These are easier for the auto resume readers to read, and also they are just more standard and expected. And definitely don't use a monospace like in a development text editor like Eclipse uses. Those fonts are kind of ugly for most people. Don't use a cursive or a compressed font, too hard to read. Use the same font and font size for all your text except your headers and possibly your contact info and your name at the top. Obviously, those can be different sizes, but all of the body text should be the same. And if you're thinking in Calibri sizes, don't go smaller than 10 point. Obviously, some fonts, Calibri or Times New Roman, 10 point is still pretty readable. Some fonts, 10 point is way too small. So make sure it's not smaller than like a 10 point Calibri looks like. Ideally, go like a 12, and the headers maybe like a 14 or a 16. When you're listing a bunch of different items, you can just list them with commas, that's fine. But it's probably better if you have some kind of info, maybe in parentheticals, all kinds of different ways to present more info. Just a list of stuff, usually not ideal. Sometimes it's fine to save space. Obviously, the more info you include, the more space you take up. You can also consider symbols or something to represent skills, like stars or something. There's a couple examples in the peer review channel of people who use stars. Those look pretty nice. Consider bullets if you have longer lists. Remember, bulleted lists can span multiple columns. You don't have to have them in a single column. And if you have longer items, so like a job description, you might put those in bullets. Make sure you use white space aggressively. Don't pack your information. Don't generate a wall of text. To make sure there are breaks in your resume where the eyes can rest and distinct sections that people can lock onto. Readability is more important than detail because most people won't read the whole thing anyway, so most of your detail is probably wasted. Don't just put a bunch of junk in one line to try to pack it in. Make sure that you have each point that you want to be seen on its own line so that it doesn't get glossed over, because if you have an important point towards the end of a line, people might give up reading by the time they get past, say, the beginning of the line. And that is just how it is. So keep in mind, again, as you go through the resume process, most people are giving it at most a minute or two of their time. So you really have to make sure that you have something for them to see all over the page, and wherever their eye locks in first will be the best info. So try it out on a few different people, see where their eye locks first. And the ones that you're peer reviewing, this time around, I'd like you to tell the person who you're peer reviewing, where did your eye lock first? So just open the page and see where your eye settled first. If it settled at the top of the page and you started reading it like a standard page in a book, fine. I mean, that's typical. And that's good because then you know exactly where to put the important info at the top. But maybe there was something about your format that drew the eye somewhere else first. So let the person you're peer reviewing know where your eye settled. And then use the strategic placement of the important stuff, the bold fonts, to focus the reader's attention on the parts you want to be seen first. So at the top of your resume, always put your full legal name. If you typically go by something other than your legal first name, you can put your nickname or what you prefer to be called in either parentheses or quotes. So if you are Robert Robertson, but you prefer to go by Bob, you could put Robert quotes Bob Bobertson or whatever his name was, Robertson. You can do that. If you typically go by your middle name, some people do that. You could omit your first name, but I would still, in that case, put your full legal name and just tell them you go by something else when you get the interview. It's not that big a deal. Most people ask what you go by anyway. It's a pretty common introductory question. So regardless of what you go by, put your full legal name. And if your nickname is like the Destroyer, you should definitely omit that. I think that's pretty obvious, though. I don't think anyone's going to try to go by the Destroyer. So also put your contact information up there right under your name. Email at least. Phone number is still pretty common, but I don't like to put my phone number if I submit the resume online because it opens you up to spam calls. I get enough of that crap already. So up to you. You can put your phone number. It's still pretty standard. It's expected. Most places will call you, not email you. So I would include your phone number up there. Generally, I would omit address. No one's going to send you a letter indicating you got an interview, so it's probably not that important. If you want to show that you live in the area, that's one reason why you might put your address. Other than that, there's not too much advantage to it. It's kind of a waste of space. There are also many people out there who are classist or discriminate against certain subtypes of people, so you never know what information your neighborhood might convey that you didn't want to convey. So unless you live in a very fancy place, you might leave it out just to avoid that kind of discrimination. It might go the other way for you. You know, you might live in Cleveland and someone sees Cleveland and they go, oh, another Clevelander, I'm going to interview this guy because I love my fellow Clevelanders. But probably it's less likely to work in your favor than against. And you should have some kind of online presence, a LinkedIn, a web, a GitHub, whatever. You can include these in your contact info too. Let people who are interested see more info about you. I've seen things like YouTube channels linked up there and all that kind of stuff. Those are great if you have any of those, and there's stuff in there that's worth seeing for an employer. So what section do you put first? Do you put your education first or your work experience first? These are the two main options really for first. Now by convention, education usually comes first. It's kind of obvious since you did your education before your work typically. Obviously, if you're not college educated, you don't normally put your education first, but all of you are college educated, so of course you're going to put that first. I would say, though, that you should do your work experience first instead, especially if you have decent work experience. Because do you know what everybody applying for the computer science jobs that you're applying for has? Or almost everybody has? Or at least everybody that's going to be up for consideration has? They all have a bachelor's degree in computer science. Essentially, everybody that's applying for the jobs you're applying for, or at least everybody that's being considered for them, has a bachelor's degree in computer science too. So it doesn't really make you stand out. Yes, it qualifies you, but hopefully they'll catch it further down anyway. What makes you stand out is something besides the fact that you have a bachelor's in computer science, like almost everybody else probably who's applying for that job. if there's something really impressive about your education, like you had a perfect 4.0 or you were on the various lists or whatever, we'll get into that later a little more, but still, I think most people in terms of education are roughly, most of the people who are contending with you for these jobs are roughly on the same level. So you're really not standing out by your education. So I would de-emphasize that section as much as possible, just because all it does is put you in the same boat as everybody else with a CS major. So what does it mean to have good work experience? Stuff that you really want to highlight are paid CS positions at any named company. By named company, I mean somebody will recognize it. If nobody recognizes it, it's still good, but you will have to explain it a little more. You might have to explain what the company does or something. So all of you are in the senior design class. You're doing a project for Avery Dennison. Everybody hiring in Cleveland knows who Avery Dennison is, and all of the other Fortune 500s in the area are so well known. And I saw some of you on your resumes have jobs like at local banks or different places like that. Everybody knows those places, so those are great things to put up front if you have those internships. If you don't have CS jobs, also consider that other roles that you've had where you had any kind of responsibility, especially leadership responsibility like management, those are good to have in any position. So if you have jobs where you had significant responsibility, even if it's in retail, especially if you were a leader or a manager of some kind, those are kind of soft substitutes for computer science experience, and you should put those on your resume somewhere near the top as well, because those are good skills to have. Those translate well to any profession. Jobs that carry responsibility are good regardless of what field they were in. So if you don't have any good work experience, then sure, lead with education, and we'll get into that some more later. So what other sections should you include? As a CS person, you should have something conveying your technical skill, the languages and tools that you're good at, and then general skills maybe like software testing, networking, all the general, not language-specific stuff that we learn here at university. Most people would also do well having a skills section. Most people are able to do at least something that other people can't generally do. So you can speak a second language, you can play a sport, maybe you can do something that's not quite under the umbrella of CS, but it's related. Like I have a lot of experience in building computer hardware. That's technically not a CS skill, so I put that in my regular skills section. Maybe you're a wizard with Excel. That could go either way. All these different kinds of things. Maybe like you're really good at Photoshop. Those are skills that aren't really CS skills. I would include those. If you're really active outside of work, you take on maybe volunteering roles, you're in clubs, especially if you've had, again, leadership or responsibility in those organizations, then you should definitely have some kind of section that conveys the level of leadership or responsibility that you had. One of the big keys, I think I'm emphasizing this pretty well, but a big key in your resume is demonstrating that you have been responsible for stuff and that you have fulfilled your responsibilities. So it's that you've had a duty and that you've carried it out, and you've carried it out well, or that you were responsible for a lot. You had heavy duties, including managerial or leadership duties. Those are the most impressive kind, generally. And if you've won rare awards, so I hate to break this to you guys. I know this is going to be a killer for a lot of you. And don't tell the humanities I said this, okay? Don't share this YouTube with them, all right? But you guys are computer science students, which means most of you are pretty good at school stuff, which means almost all of you are on the dean's list. Sorry. No, I mean, not almost all of you, but a very large number of you are at least on the dean's list, just by virtue of you being in a relatively difficult major, perhaps, your overall GPA, just based on your academic skill, is probably quite high, and obviously not true for everyone, but I think it's fair to say that probably like 80-90% have like a 3.2 or better, something around those metrics. So if you're including all the different soft awards you've won, like Dean's List, you're taking up a lot of space. That's not to say that you shouldn't include Dean's List, President's List, Summa Cum Laude, all these different awards you have. You definitely should include those. There's still definitely something to be proud of. Just don't think that those are like worthy of their own award section and that they're super rare. I would say include those along in your education section. They aren't like awards in and of themselves. So what I mean when I say that you've won rare awards is that you've won something that maybe 5, 10% or fewer of your peers have won. So even if you just won like the blue ribbon at the county fair for your 4-H chicken raising, that's a cool award. That is a talking point. So you should include that. That is a level of responsibility that most people did not undertake, and you won something because you did well in that responsibility. So those are cool awards. Really, anything that is rare, even if it's silly, might be worth including. And even if it's not like employment relevant, it might be worth including. Someone asked, does the FBI list count? Depends which one, I guess. Most wanted? Probably not. So more about the education section. A lot of resume writers, I think even the Career Center here, will advise you to put like the full contact info of the university, like its city and its phone number. And you can, but if you're applying for a job in Cleveland, everybody knows where John Carroll is and what they are. I don't think you'll find a lot of hiring managers in Cleveland that go like, what's John Carroll? So if you're applying in this city, it's probably suffices to just say the name of the university, what you majored in, what you minored in. When you have to say what you majored in and what you minored in, some people like to spell out the whole name of the degree, like Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science. Kind of annoying that science is in there twice. You could just say your major is computer science, minor, whatever you minored in. So just consider whether including the words Bachelor's of Science in is worth the space or not. I would argue it probably isn't. There is a difference, obviously, between a Bachelor's of Science and a Bachelor's of Arts. So if you really insist on putting it, you could put the traditional B.S. or something of that nature. Or you can just omit it and just say major computer science. Only put your GPA if it's above 3.5. If it's below 3.5, or even if it's right around 3.5, that puts you in the territory of average, and it's not particularly impressive, and nobody's going to ask, right? So if you graduated with a 2.5, no one will ever ask. Almost guaranteed. They might ask to see your transcripts when they're almost ready to hire you, but as long as you actually graduated college, I've very rarely seen anybody care once they've decided to hire you. So if your GPA is worse than a 3.5, just omit it. And the kinds of people who care about high GPAs will probably, either overlook you or they might just forget to check. Anyway, it's not going to benefit you very much if you put a GPA below 3.5 on there. It's really not going to make you stand out because at that point you're just not beating enough people for it to be impressive. But if you're applying outside of Cleveland, JC is pretty well known across the Midwest. But if you're applying in like California, then definitely at least include the city that the university is located in. I would say Cleveland instead of University Heights if you're applying outside of the city, because University Heights doesn't mean that much. You can put either, though. That's a tough one. You could put the whole address of the institution. Just put 1 John Carroll Boulevard, University Heights, Ohio, something like that would be enough. You could put the main phone. Don't put like a department's phone or something. Put the main phone line for the university. And the same stuff as well. You could also, if you're applying outside of Cleveland, start adding some relevant coursework or somehow describe what the CS program here is, because CS programs vary widely by content across the United States in terms of what they cover and how they cover it. This is more of a software engineering program compared to many others. There are also programs that are more of like a web developer. There are programs that are more of like a programmer. There are places that are more hardware. There are places that are more, I don't know, low-level programming like C, all kinds of different computer science programs around. If you're close to graduation, which most of you are, so if it's within a year, you know the month and the year you're going to graduate, so just put it. Don't say expected to graduate or whatever. Just when you put the dates that you're in university, put your estimated graduation month and year right on there. And include your education awards like the Dean's List here, as well as how many years you earned them or how many semesters you earned them. Definitely include high awards like President's List and things like that. So the work experience section, again, just like with the university, the name of the employer, usually put their main public phone line. Don't put the phone number of your reference there. You'll just provide that upon request, your professional references, your supervisor or what have you. Just put the main phone or the HR line directly. Typically all any employer will do is verify that you have worked there. Just because of legal liability reasons, typically your former employers will not discuss your performance in any way. They will simply confirm your dates of employment. If they badmouthed you or they said something that led to you not getting the job, you would have grounds for a lawsuit. Most HR departments just sidestep the issue by having a policy of saying nothing about anybody except confirming the time that they worked there. So unless somebody like your former manager vouches for you personally, but not as an agent of the company, the HR for the company is used to work at will not share any info about you. No performance reviews, no did he show up to work every day, nothing like that. They'll just say, yep, he worked here, these are the dates. That's all we can tell you, so that's the phone number you need to give. You can probably omit the address or the city unless you have some compelling reason for including those for your employer. It probably doesn't matter. One compelling reason might be that it's an unknown company or relatively unknown name, and it's outside of the city where you're applying for work. So if you worked in, let's say, Utah at some small firm, you might want to say that it was in Utah. Otherwise, they're going to look for an employer with that name in Cleveland and note that there isn't one, and that can get confusing. So if it's outside the city or if it's a small company with poor name recognition, then you might want to include where it's located, at least the city, in addition to the number. And the big thing is with work experience, right? What did you do there? Just putting your employer is not enough. You have to describe what you did there again. Your level of responsibility, what kind of duties were allotted to you, and how well you carried them out. So let's talk about what not to do in describing what you did. First, never use team words, non-individualized action words. Don't say you participated, worked with, assisted, helped with, co-developed, etc. Don't use non-individual terms because that doesn't tell anybody what you did or what your level of responsibility was. If we wrote a 1,000-line program and I wrote one line of it, then I'm a co-developer, okay? I know it's stupid, but it's not the same as being a developer, so avoid team-based words. And then the usual dichotomy of moderation, don't be too vague, but also don't be too specific. Helped several clients is too vague. Helped 7 is too specific. Words like dozens, hundreds, tens of those kinds of things are good enough. But definitely don't say you helped exactly 243 clients a day, and don't just say you helped several, because that also doesn't tell me anything. That could be anywhere from 3 to 1 million. So what are some individual action items that you can use, action words you can use? Developed, designed, implemented, created, programmed, wrote. All those are individual actions. Don't be afraid to individualize a group action. This is a kind of a lie of omission, right? Saying that you developed something when it was actually developed by a team. Okay, you're omitting the team's contribution. So it seems wrong to a lot of people to say you developed something when you developed it as part of a team of 4. Well, everything is like that, right? Nothing is done in a vacuum. You always have help. You're always a co-developer. It's very rare for you to be the sole developer of something. You don't have to say co-developed. You can still just say developed. You had a contribution. You can discuss the group element of it later. Don't try to lie by commission and convey that you were the sole developer of something when you did it as part of a team. But it's okay to omit the co-word because it is pretty obvious that almost anything you do at a company is not done solely by you. In fact, if you have the sole responsibility of something, if you did make something completely on your own, emphasize it. Say you were the sole developer or something like that. Use some words to convey that it actually was a one-man thing, a one-man project. You did it all on your own. Now, a caveat to this is that you still want to show that you're a team player. So you can try to highlight your individual achievement, your individual contribution, but still emphasize that you were part of a group and you worked with others to accomplish it. So instead of co-developed X, you can say that you developed Y as part of a team working on X. So say what you did specifically in the project and say that you were part of a team that was working on it in the broader project. That shows that you're a team player, but also shows that you had individual responsibility. So different things like that can still convey that you were part of a team. You can say that you were part of a team working with so many people and then say what you did. Those could be two separate lines. So still convey that you were on a team, but also convey your individual accomplishments. Use active wording. Don't say things like an application was developed. This is how you're taught to write in scientific research courses in the passive voice. Don't use the passive voice on resumes. You would say developed an application. I didn't see a lot of passive voice on the first drafts you guys turned in, so that's good. Stay with the active voice. Emphasize, again, leadership, responsibility, and duty. Emphasize what you were responsible for, what duties you had, and any kind of leadership that you were, what's the word? Not entitled to, but given. Any kind of leadership power you were given. So convey the extent of your responsibility. How many people were you responsible for? What projects were you responsible for? Those kinds of things are what you're trying to demonstrate. Describe what you did, not what you were. Don't focus on describing your role. We all have a rough idea in our heads of what it means to be a developer, a cashier, a store associate. So if you spend like 2 lines of the description redefining what cashier is, that's not useful. Same if you're redefining what a developer is. You wrote code, duh, right? You designed an application, okay. What was it? What did it do as a cashier? I mean, what responsibilities did you have? We know in practice what most of those roles are roughly. And then we also know that every company, it's going to be a little bit different. Being an associate at one company is not the same as being an associate at another. So try to describe very specifically what that role actually did. Be specific about what you did in that job. And of course, the hype machine, right? Always run the hype machine. Remember to maximum hype, not maximum hype, but hype your stuff, okay? Don't say babysitter. Say you simultaneously supervise 3 young children for up to 10 hours. Sounds much more impressive. What are your roles there? Responsibility, right? 3 young children. Simultaneously. A lot of work at the same time. Up to 10 hours, long responsibility. You've demonstrated responsibility there in a few different ways. Cashier, handled cash and deposited nightly transactions. What'd you demonstrate there? Responsibility. You're trustworthy. You can be trusted with cash. Okay? You can be trusted to deposit it at night on your own. Provided an on-demand customer service in a high-paced environment. You have responsibility. You can provide customer service. You have flexibility. You're able to work in a high-paced environment. You respond well in stressful situations. Those are all demonstrated by those kinds of hyped-up expressions. Now let's say you have very limited employment experience, as many of you do. First of all, ouch, that does suck. It's much harder to get a job when you don't have a job. That's the paradox of employment. But you don't see a lot of 80-year-olds walking around because they couldn't get their, still unemployed because they couldn't get their first job, right? So it happens to everyone eventually. just sometimes it's a process, but try to get some non-school projects to talk about. Get a GitHub profile, a website, a game, an app, something you can show quickly and easily to employers when you interview. Maybe even something you can link to on the resume. That would be great. Consider entrepreneurship. Consider starting your own business or your own project of some sort. Starting a registered official legal business is pretty straightforward. It costs about $150. We'll probably do a presentation on it in senior design at some point, just to show you guys what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And it doesn't have to work out. You don't have to turn a profit. You don't have to make money. You just have to try, learn something from it, and have a nice bullet point for your resume. If you're going to go this route, I would recommend you start the business legally so it can be on the books. That way you have something official to reference. You don't necessarily have to if you don't want to pay the $150 or so just to have an official sounding real business on your resume. I guess you don't have to. You can say that you didn't quite make it to that phase yet. And of course, if you have other friends who are interested, you can do this as well with them. And then at least you'll have been part of a team in that sense too. And then consider alternate work experience, things that are either unpaid or gig economy style jobs. You can volunteer, you can freelance. Driving Uber is a job too, and that's not hard to get into. All those different kinds of things are technically work experience. That's better than nothing, right? And volunteering can carry a lot of responsibility. It's because it's always difficult to find people to volunteer their time. You can get a lot of responsibility there very quickly, and that would definitely be a good kind of work experience. Freelance, of course, is very similar to entrepreneurship, but again, things like driving Uber or whatever, those are still experience too. So just consider other things that can take the place of work. And just remember that school probably won't take the place of work. Okay, so any of your school courses and all that good stuff, that's great, but you will need probably something to get a good computer science development job. You'll need something besides school. If it's a job that you really want, play Buzzword Bingo, read their job description, go on their website, see the words that they like to use, synergy, 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 or whatever it is that they like to say, and include those words in your resume. Just copy the ones that are relevant to you. Obviously, again, don't lie, but commission. Emphasize the languages that they want to see, emphasize the skills that they want to see, but don't do this for every job or it's going to take forever, because bringing us to the next point, remember, your odds of a callback are bad, 10, maybe 20% if you're well qualified and you have a good resume. It's nothing personal. It doesn't reflect badly on you. Unless your rate is significantly lower, then you might have to go back and look at your resume and think, what am I doing wrong here? So if your rate has fallen well below even 10%, then it's time to go back to the drawing board on your resume maybe. But otherwise, remember, that's just how it is. It's not personal. So there's a lot of reasons for that. But yeah, that's just what it is. When you're writing your different descriptions, make sure that you use language that's industry standard only. So acronyms like IP, HTML, CSS, Mac, whatever, those are all really common in this profession. It's much more common to use those acronyms than to use the thing that they abbreviate for. So it would look weird if you spelled them out. Make sure that your acronyms fall into that same general description. It's something that people will always abbreviate. It would look weird if you spelled them out. All right, so if you're not sure that the acronym you're planning to use is a standard term that's used across the industry, then spell it out. Be cautious about using the acronyms of your organization. What you guys abbreviate, probably nobody else does, or people might abbreviate it differently. So any acronyms you learned at work, be cautious about those. Maybe Google them first and see how many results pop up. You might be surprised how infrequent the use of an acronym you thought everybody knew is. And remember that HR people will generally be the first to look at your resume. They get a list of terms that they're looking for in resumes, and those are the ones you need to match. So if there are words like HTML, and you type the thing that HTML abbreviates, hypertext markup language, HR person might not know that hypertext markup language abbreviates to HTML and just toss yours in the trash because that wasn't a skill that they were looking for. So just make sure that if it's a common term that's usually acronymized, then you use the acronym. And if it's not, then spell it out. Just try to match what they get, match their expectations. And obviously make sure that you know what every acronym on your resume means. Preferably know what every acronym on your resume stands for. What does CSS stand for? Anybody? I guess IP too. I'll just run those two out there because I already gave you hypertext markup language. Does anyone remember what IP or CSS stand for? And bonus question, is Java an acronym? Is a Java an acronym? Okay, so common acronyms like ATM, FBI, etc., those are also acceptable acronyms that everybody knows. That's fine. Again, make sure it's an acronym that everybody knows, not just that you think everybody knows. And avoid jargon and complex terms. If your resume contains the word refactoring, think again, that's probably not a good word to have, things like that. Don't even go over well necessarily with CS hiring managers. Find a way to convey your skill in the different programming languages and tools that you have used. All right, so by skill, I mean how many years you've been working with them. Somebody said that Java is the Japanese American Veterans Association. That's exactly it. That's what the language is. We program in Japanese American Veterans Association. Find a way to convey your skill in Japanese American Veterans Association. So if you have 4 years of skill programming in Japanese American Veterans Association, you can put it in parentheses like that. Technically, your years in university don't usually count as years experience by most people's definition. You could still do it if you wanted to. It's not like there's a standard in what's supposed to count as a year experience. So I don't count my university years, but I count since I started writing private projects in whatever language it is. As soon as you feel comfortable enough to write your own stuff, you could say that starts the year count, and then however long you continued working in that language, at least on a regular basis, counts. But most people would say it's just your professional employment experience in that language. You could even differentiate that by saying work years experience or something like that. Private projects, of course, I think count too. You can also do like a star system or use words, again, like proficient or skilled. Be consistent if you choose to use words. Star system works really well. I think a couple of the resumes posted in the peer review had like a star or an asterisk system for conveying their skill. I've also seen people use a 1 to 10 scale or like a sliding scale between beginner and expert. Those are neat too. A little bit of Zen philosophy here for you guys. The closer you get to expert, the further you move yourself towards beginner on the sliding scale. So it can be a bit of a paradox, because the more you know, the more you realize you don't. Yeah, very, very difficult to assess your skill in a language. That's why years is the more common practice, because the better you think you are at a language, the less you are good at it, probably, because the more good at it you are, truthfully, the more you realize that you're probably not that great at it. I know, very, very strange. Okay. Some other skills that you should list. If you have another non-technical skills section, you should list any complex skills you have that are rare. Anything that you can do that 9 out of 10 people can't is a good skill to list. So if you can use Microsoft Word, I would not put that, because I think 9 out of 10 people applying for the kinds of jobs you're applying for can also use Microsoft Word. But if you are skilled in something like Photoshop or video editing, or you can make music, where you're good at other software that most people generally aren't good at, like Blender or I don't know, whatever. Anyway, any kind of software that most people probably aren't good at. If you have artistic talent, if you can draw or sing or dance or basket weave, those are cool to list. Anything else you can do that's rare. Not if you can fold your tongue in 3 places. Yeah, that's not interesting. No one cares. Foreign languages are a big plus. If you can speak a second language, you should definitely include it, because some companies have multilingual investments or multilingual whatever. They have companies in other countries, or they have products in other countries. So make sure you put that. If you speak one, make sure you put that. But if you say you can speak another language and you just learned it in school and you actually can't speak it, that's bad. That's one of those lies of omission because you will probably get called out on it. I'm fluent in Russian. I've put that on my resume. I think it's been called out at every job I've ever interviewed for in person. Somebody has always spoken Russian to me to like check me on it. Okay, so you will be checked on it for sure. Don't think you won't. Sports or talent accomplishments, put those if you're an accomplished athlete or gymnast or tap dancer or whatever. You can put those, especially if you've won awards. If you have won awards, especially for sports or tap dancing or whatever, then consider an awards section. Somebody jokingly said, I've gotten 11 victory royales. What about that? Hey, being high ranked at any competitive game would be worthy of at least a bullet. I think I used to have something like that on my resume. Yeah, if you're top 100 at StarCraft or something, I'd say that's worth including because while it isn't necessarily a responsibility, it is a level of dedication and skill that most people are not capable of getting to. So if you're a globally ranked Rocket Leaguer or StarCraftier or Counter-Striker or something else, put that. If you're a globally ranked Fortniter, oh god, omit that. You'll never get a job. No one wants to hire you. No, but really, if you're very good at Fortnite, you can put that too. And then, if all else fails, I recommend everybody do this. I know it's dumb, but because a lot of resumes are read by machines, I have at the end of my resume a secret section that is all white and in 1-point font. And I just have a bunch of buzzwords in there, just synergy, years experience, and then every different programming language I can think of, just all kinds of lovely stuff to get past the auto readers so I can get to the human eyeballs, so that at least I get rejected by human eyeballs. So it's good to have this. So just this literally 1-point font matches your background color so that it's invisible solely for auto readers because human eyes will probably see the either printed out version or whatever. They won't see those words because they'll be invisible. All right, so this is a great idea for getting your resume to pass the auto readers. All right, before I sign off and give you guys a few minutes to work on your resumes because we're almost done today anyway, are there any questions? Any questions before we wrap it up? I'll say for the secret section, you can get a lot of buzzwords from different job postings. So as you look through job postings, if you see the same kinds of words pop up in different jobs, you can add those to your buzzword section. Like some of the really fancy terms right now are microservices, Kubernetes, Docker, all those different kinds of things. I never work with these things. I have no need as a professor to work with these things. I've seen them, but it's not like I work with them every day. I'm not going to put them in my main resume, but I'm going to put them in my super secret white word section so that I can at least pass my super secret thing. Someone said, I don't think anyone in America is top 100 in StarCraft. You don't have to be top 100 in the world. You can be top 100 in America. That's still really impressive. There's 350 million Americans and, I don't know, probably at least 10,000, if not 100,000 regular StarCraft 2 players. So if you're at the top 100, that's quite impressive. As somebody who was quite high ranked in StarCraft, it was quite impressive, okay? Not top 100, but, it was something impressive back in the day. So any other questions? All right, well, I'll give you the last 15 minutes to pull up what you got and compare it to this. So writing your second draft will be homework. It'll be due probably next time, so pretty tight deadline here. Try to get it in so we can peer review it. So again, it'll probably be due Thursday before class so that you can get your peer review. And then on Thursday, I will meet with you guys one-on-one in Discord during class to talk to you about your resume's second draft here as well. And this one I will actually grade the first generation. I basically gave everyone 100 for taking a crack at it. This one I'm actually going to review a bit, and I'll knock you if I see something particularly bad. So put some effort into this one. And hopefully by the end of this week, you'll have a resume good enough to start applying for jobs, because you ought to get started on that. All right, I'll see you guys in Discord, and always, again, feel free to reach out to me during office hours or by email if you need help writing your resume. I'm glad to help you before the peer review part as well. Okay, so that's it for this week, guys. See you in senior design shortly.